Let me tell you something that almost nobody talks about. One of the most brilliant minds in physics, the man who gave us the equation that governs quantum reality, spent his entire life regretting it. Erwin Schrödinger, you know his name. You've heard about his cat. But here's what they don't tell you in the textbooks. He hated what he discovered, not because he got it wrong, but because he got it right in a way that terrified him, in a way that shattered his deepest belief about how reality should work. And here's the kicker. His journey, his resistance, his ultimate surrender to what the quantum world was showing him. It mirrors exactly what happens when you try to manifest a new reality but keep fighting the very mechanism that could set you free. So if you've ever felt like you're doing everything right but reality keeps collapsing in ways you don't expect, stay with me on this. Because Schrödinger's failed mission reveals something profound about the nature of observation, consciousness, and why you might be the biggest obstacle to your own transformation. Picture this: Vienna, 1925. Schrödinger is frustrated. The quantum revolution is happening around him. Heisenberg, Bohr, Born, and they're all talking about these abrupt, discontinuous quantum jumps. Electrons leaping between energy levels with no smooth transition. Just boom. Here one moment, there the next, and Schrödinger, he despised it. He called it nonsense. He thought it was intellectually lazy. Because in his mind, nature doesn't jump. Nature flows. Everything should evolve smoothly, continuously, predictably. Sound familiar? How many times have you thought, if I could just create a smooth path from here to there? If I could just control the process, if reality would just evolve the way I need it to? That was Schrödinger, a man who believed deeply philosophically that the universe should make sense, that it should follow rules, that chaos and discontinuity were illusions we'd eventually explain away. So he set out on a mission to save physics from what he saw as the madness of quantum jumps. He wanted to show that underneath all this apparent randomness there was a smooth, wave-like evolution, something elegant, something you could predict. And here's where it gets interesting. He actually succeeded, kind of. In 1926, he published his equation, the Schrödinger equation, and it was revolutionary. It described how quantum waves, what we call wave functions, evolve over time, smoothly, continuously, no jumps. His equation applies to everything: electrons, atoms, molecules, in principle, even baseballs and planets and you. It became the new universal law of motion, replacing Newton's laws for the quantum realm. He thought he'd won. He thought he'd eliminated those damn quantum jumps by showing that reality evolves as a wave, spreading out smoothly through space and time. But here's the paradox, and this is where most people miss the deeper lesson. The equation was correct, brilliant even, but Schrödinger's interpretation of what it meant? Completely wrong. And that misunderstanding, that gap between the mathematics and the meaning, is exactly where the magic happens, where observation becomes creation, where your role as the observer stops being passive and becomes the most powerful thing about you. Let me show you what I mean. To understand Schrödinger's mistake, you first need to understand what he was working with, the strange, almost impossible dual nature of quantum objects. Here's the thing. Electrons, photons, all these tiny particles, they're not just particles, they're also waves at the same time. Let me break this down because it's crucial. In 1923, Arthur Compton showed that photons, particles of light, could collide with electrons like tiny billiard balls. Compact, localized. Bang, they hit, they bounce off. That's particle behavior. But then you run the double slit experiment. You shoot those same photons or electrons through two narrow slits, and on the other side, they create an interference pattern. Bands of light and dark. An interference? That only happens with waves. Waves that spread out, overlap, cancel each other out in some places and amplify in others. So which is it? Particle or wave? The answer is both, and neither. It depends on what you're measuring, what you're observing. Now pay attention to this because it connects directly to how you create your reality. The nature of the object, compact particle or spread out wave, isn't fixed. It responds to the type of experiment you choose to run. You want to see a particle? You'll see a particle. You want to see a wave? You'll see a wave. The quantum world doesn't exist in a definite state until you look. And this is where Schrödinger comes in. He said, okay, if these objects behave like waves, then let me describe them mathematically as waves. And he did. He created the wave function, a mathematical representation of the quantum object. But here's what no one tells you. The wave function isn't just a description of the object. In some very real sense, the wave function is the object itself. There is no electron separate from its wave function. The waviness, the spread-out probability-rich regions where the wave function is large, that's where you're most likely to find the object when you observe it. Cosmologists talk about the wave function of the universe. Schrödinger himself calculated wave functions for a friend, for a cat, even for the entire universe. The wave function is that fundamental. So what did Schrödinger think this meant? He thought the waviness represented the object being literally smeared out across space, like a fog, an electron fog where the fog is denser in some regions than others. He thought if you had an electron with waviness spread over, say, a few inches, that meant bits of the electron were scattered throughout that region. More electron stuff where the fog was thick, less where it was thin. It made sense to him. The wave spreads smoothly, the object spreads with it. Everything evolves continuously just like he wanted. No quantum jumps, no discontinuities, just smooth, predictable flow. But then came the experimental facts. And this is where everything fell apart for him. Because when you actually observe a quantum object, when you measure it, when you interact with it, you don't find little pieces of it scattered around. You don't find a smeared out fog. You find the whole thing, all of it, at one single point. Either the entire electron is there or it's not. There's no in-between, no partial detections, no gradual transition. The waviness can extend for kilometers, and yet, the instant you observe, boom, the whole object appears at one spot. The wave doesn't shrink, it doesn't flow inward, it collapses instantaneously. That's the quantum jump Schrödinger was trying to get rid of, and it wouldn't go away. So here's my question for you. Where in your life have you been trying to create smooth, predictable evolution? Where have you been resisting the collapse, the sudden, discontinuous shift from infinite possibility to singular reality? Because what Schrödinger discovered, much to his horror, is that you can't have one without the other. Let's go deeper. Let me paint you a picture of what actually happens when you observe a quantum object, and I want you to really sit with this because it's going to challenge everything you think you know about how reality works. Imagine an alpha particle. It's a chunk of matter ejected from a radioactive nucleus. According to Schrödinger's equation, its wave function, its waviness, spreads out smoothly over time. After a while, that waviness extends over kilometers, not inches, kilometers. If Schrödinger were right, if the alpha particle were really smeared out across all that space, you'd expect to find little pieces of it everywhere. Tiny traces of radioactivity scattered throughout the region where the waviness is non-zero. But that's not what happens. Not even close. You set up a Geiger counter somewhere in that vast region. Maybe it's on the edge where the waviness is faint. Maybe it's in the center where the waviness is strong. Doesn't matter. When the counter clicks, and it either clicks or it doesn't, you find the entire alpha particle right there, inside the counter. All of it. Not a fraction. Not a hint. The whole thing, localized to within a fraction of a millimeter. And here's the kicker. The moment before the click, the waviness was spread over kilometers. The moment after the click, it's all concentrated at one point. What happened to the smooth evolution Schrödinger promised? It collapsed. Instantly. Discontinuously. The very quantum jump he was trying to eliminate. Let me give you another example because this pattern repeats everywhere in quantum mechanics. And it's stunning in its consistency. The double-slit experiment with electrons. You shoot electrons one at a time through two slits. The wave function passes through both slits, creates two separate clumps of waviness a few inches apart on the far side. If the electron were really spread out, you'd expect to see something gradual on the detection screen. A smudge, a distributed pattern, maybe two faint spots corresponding to the two clumps of waviness. But no, you get a single flash, one spot, sharp, localized, the whole electron detected at one place. Run the experiment thousands of times and the flashes build up an interference pattern. But each individual detection, one electron, one spot, no distribution. The wave extends, the detection is singular. And this is where Schrödinger started to feel the weight of what he'd created. His equation was correct. The wave does evolve smoothly, but his interpretation of what the wave meant fundamentally wrong. The object isn't smeared out. The waviness isn't the object itself in a distributed form. It's something else. Something stranger. It's a map of possibilities. The waviness tells you where the object might appear when you observe it. Where the wave is large, high probability. Where it's small, low probability. But until the moment of observation, the object doesn't exist at any particular location. It exists in a state of pure potential, a superposition of all possible locations simultaneously. And then you observe, you interact, you collapse the wave, and reality snaps into place. One location, one outcome, out of infinite possibilities. This is the part most people don't grasp. This is the part that makes quantum mechanics so profoundly relevant to consciousness, to manifestation, to the very nature of how you create your experience. Schrödinger's mission was to eliminate uncertainty, to show that reality evolves predictably from one state to the next. But what he actually discovered was that reality doesn't exist in a definite state at all, until you look. The act of observation isn't passive, it's creative, and that terrified him. Because if observation collapses the wave, if the simple act of looking forces reality to choose one outcome from an infinite field of possibilities, then who's doing the observing matters. You matter. Your consciousness matters. And that's not a metaphor. That's experimental fact. So let's talk about what actually happens in that moment of collapse. Because this is where quantum mechanics stops being abstract physics and starts being a mirror for your own experience. The wave is spread out. Infinite possibilities exist simultaneously. But the moment you observe, the moment consciousness interacts with the quantum field, boom, one reality manifests. Not because you chose it consciously, not because you attracted it with positive thoughts, but because the act of observation itself forces the wave function to collapse. Here's what I want you to hear. You are always observing. Always, every moment of your life, you're collapsing waves. You're taking infinite possibility and crystallizing it into the singular experience you call reality. The question is, what are you observing? Most people observe from fear, from lack, from the pattern their childhood conditioning installed. They observe the same old reality collapsing in the same old way, and they wonder why nothing changes. But here's the paradox Schrödinger stumbled into. You can't control the collapse. You can't force the wave to land where you want it. That's the whole point. The collapse is discontinuous, unpredictable, a quantum jump. The more you try to micromanage how reality should unfold, the more you reinforce the very pattern you're trying to escape. Schrödinger wanted smooth evolution. He wanted to predict every step, and the universe said, no, that's not how this works. Reality doesn't flow from A to B to C. It jumps from infinite possibility to singular manifestation. And you don't get to control the jump. You only get to influence the probability field beforehand. Think about the alpha particle again. Its waviness extends over kilometers. But when it collapses, where does it appear? Anywhere within that field, but more likely where the waviness is strong, less likely where it's weak. You can't guarantee the outcome, but you can shape the probability landscape. And how do you do that? Not by effort, not by forcing, but by aligning your internal state, your thoughts, emotions, beliefs, with the frequency of the reality you want to observe. Schrödinger didn't want to hear that. He wanted determinism, predictability, control, but quantum mechanics said, embrace the uncertainty, because that's where your power lies. In the space before the collapse, infinite versions of you exist, infinite timelines, infinite possibilities. And the one that manifests, it's not random, it's coherent with the observer you're being in that moment. Pause with that for a moment. Not the observer you're trying to be, the observer you are. Schrödinger fought this his whole life. Even after his equation became the foundation of quantum mechanics, even after it was validated by countless experiments, he never made peace with the collapse. In 1952, he wrote, "If we are still going to put up with these damn quantum jumps, I am sorry that I ever had anything to do with quantum theory." That's despair. That's a man confronting the limits of his control. But here's what I want you to see. Schrödinger's resistance mirrors the resistance you feel when life doesn't unfold the way you planned. When the manifestation doesn't arrive smoothly. When reality collapses in a way that feels sudden, chaotic, uncomfortable. You wanted smooth evolution. You wanted to see the path clearly. You wanted to control every step. And the quantum field says, that's not how creation works. Creation is a dance between wave and particle, between infinite possibility and singular outcome, between your intention and the mystery of collapse. You set up the probability field through your focus, your emotion, your alignment. But you don't get to dictate the exact moment or manner of collapse. And that's not a flaw in the system. That's the power of the system. Because if you could control the collapse completely, you'd only ever manifest what your limited, conditioned mind can imagine. You'd recreate the same patterns over and over. But when you surrender to the uncertainty, when you trust the quantum nature of reality, you open yourself to outcomes more elegant, more perfect, more aligned than you could have orchestrated yourself. Schrödinger couldn't see that, or maybe he could and it scared him. Because accepting the collapse means accepting that you're not in control in the way you thought. You're not the director of a predetermined script. You're the observer. And observation is an act of co-creation. You shape the field. The field responds. Reality emerges, not because, not therefore, not through linear cause and effect, but through collapse, through discontinuity, through the very quantum jump Schrödinger tried to eliminate. So let me ask you this. Where in your life are you fighting the collapse? Where are you gripping the steering wheel so tightly that you're blocking the very manifestation you're asking for? What would happen if you loosened your grip? If you set up your probability field with clarity and intention, and then trusted the collapse to happen in its own time, in its own way? That's the shift Schrödinger eventually made, not because he wanted to, but because reality left him no choice. And what he discovered on the other side of that surrender? Something far more outrageous than he ever imagined. Let's move into that now. Here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. After decades of fighting the quantum interpretation, after insisting that reality should be smooth and deterministic, Schrödinger did something radical. He stopped fighting, and he started asking a different question. Not how do I eliminate the collapse, but what does the collapse tell us about the nature of consciousness? In 1944, he published a book called What is Life? And it wasn't about physics, it was about biology, about genetics, about how quantum mechanics might explain the stability of genetic information. That book inspired Francis Crick. Yes, the co-discoverer of DNA. Crick said Schrödinger's ideas directly influenced his approach to understanding the molecular basis of life. But here's where it gets even more profound. Later, Schrödinger wrote another book, Mind and Matter. And the first chapter? The physical basis of consciousness. Not consciousness as an emergent property of matter, but consciousness as a fundamental feature woven into the fabric of physical reality. Do you see what he was doing? He was no longer trying to explain away the observer. He was centering the observer. He was saying, the act of observation changes reality. That's not a problem to solve. That's the nature of the universe. And this is where everything shifts. Because once you accept that observation collapses the wave, that your consciousness isn't separate from the quantum field but actively participating in its manifestation. You stop being a victim of reality. You become a co-creator. Not through magical thinking, not through bypassing the hard parts, but through a fundamental reorientation to what you are. You are not a body with consciousness. You are consciousness observing through a body. And observation at the quantum level is an act of creation. Let me give you the science, the clean experimental facts. No woo, no spiritual bypassing, just what the data shows. When a quantum object is in superposition, when its wave function is spread out across multiple possibilities, it doesn't occupy any definite state. It exists in all states simultaneously until measured. The moment you measure, the moment you introduce an observer, the wave collapses, one outcome manifests, the other possibilities vanish. This isn't interpretation, this isn't philosophy. This is what happens in every quantum experiment ever conducted. And here's the stunning part. It doesn't matter what kind of measuring device you use. It doesn't matter if it's a sophisticated detector or a simple screen. What matters is that an observation occurs. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics take this even further. They suggest that consciousness itself is the key ingredient, that the collapse doesn't happen until a conscious observer becomes aware of the result. That's controversial. But even in the most conservative interpretation, the fact remains: observation changes reality. You can't observe a system without altering it, and at the quantum level, the alteration isn't negligible. It's total. It's the difference between infinite possibilities and singular manifestation. So here's the radical shift I want to offer you. The shift Schrödinger eventually made, whether he admitted it or not. Stop trying to control reality from outside. Stop acting like you're separate from the quantum field, trying to manipulate it with techniques and practices. Start recognizing that you are the observer. You are already collapsing waves. You're already manifesting reality. The question is, what frequency are you observing from? Are you observing from fear? From lack? From the belief that reality is fixed and you're stuck? Or are you observing from curiosity? From alignment? From the recognition that before the collapse, infinite possibilities exist and the one that manifests is coherent with the state of consciousness you're embodying? This is not about thinking positive thoughts and hoping for the best. This is about quantum coherence. It's about aligning your internal frequency, your thoughts, emotions, beliefs, energy, with the reality you want to observe into being, and then letting the collapse happen, trusting the discontinuity, embracing the quantum jump. Let's bring this full circle, because Schrödinger's journey from resistance to acceptance to transcendence is your journey too. Remember the alpha particle? Waviness extending over kilometers, but when observed, the entire particle appears at one point. Now think about your life, your reality. Right now, before the next moment collapses, you exist in a field of infinite possibilities. Infinite versions of your future are encoded in the quantum field as probability waves. Some are more likely than others. The waviness is dense in certain regions, outcomes that match your current frequency, your habitual patterns, your deepest beliefs. But other possibilities exist too. Fainter, less likely, but real, mathematically valid solutions to the Schrödinger equation of your life. The version of you who breaks the pattern. The version who manifests the thing you've been told is impossible. The version who collapses into a reality so different from your current one that it feels like a quantum jump. That version exists, right now, in superposition with all the other versions. And which one manifests? The one you observe, the one you align with, the one you become coherent with through your focus, your emotion, your identity, not tomorrow. Not after you've done enough inner work, not when you finally feel worthy enough. Now, in this moment, in every moment, you're always observing, always collapsing. The question is never, can I manifest? You're manifesting right now. The question is, what am I manifesting? Schrödinger hated the collapse because he saw it as randomness, as loss of control, as chaos. But what if the collapse isn't random? What if it's responding precisely, elegantly, perfectly to the observer you're being? That's what the cosmologists wonder about. They talk about the wave function of the entire universe. And they ask, what collapses it? Some say consciousness. Some say the act of observation itself. Some say it's always collapsing in every moment, creating the unfolding tapestry of reality. But here's what they all agree on. The collapse is real. It's fundamental. You can't understand quantum mechanics without it, and you can't understand manifestation without it either. Because manifestation isn't about effort, it's about coherence. You don't force the wave to collapse where you want it. You can't. That's the whole point of Schrödinger's failed mission. He wanted control, predictability, smooth evolution from A to B. But the quantum field doesn't work that way. It works through alignment, through resonance, through you becoming the observer whose frequency matches the reality you want to experience. And then the collapse happens. The quantum jump, the discontinuous shift from one state to another with no intermediate steps. That's why transformation can feel sudden. Why breakthroughs come out of nowhere. Why you can do inner work for months with no visible change, and then, boom, everything shifts overnight. It's not linear. It's quantum. The waviness builds, the probability field shifts, your internal coherence increases, and then, at some moment you can't predict or control, the wave collapses and you find yourself in a new reality. Not because you earned it, not because you finally did enough, but because the observer you became was coherent with that reality. That's the elegance of it. That's the precision Schrödinger was looking for. He just didn't realize it wasn't in the smooth evolution of the wave. It was in the intelligence of the collapse. The universe isn't random, it's responsive. And you're not a passive recipient, you're an active observer, a conscious participant, a co-creator in the truest sense of the word. Schrödinger discovered this, not through his equation, but through his life, through his resistance and his eventual surrender to the quantum nature of reality. And now it's your turn. So let me bring this home, because this isn't just theory. This is the most practical thing I can tell you. You are not broken. You are not stuck. You are not a victim of a fixed reality that refuses to change. You are a quantum observer living inside a quantum field. And observation, at the deepest level of physical reality, is an act of creation. Schrödinger tried to eliminate the quantum jump. He spent his entire career fighting the discontinuity, the collapse, the sudden shift from wave to particle, and in the end he discovered something far more outrageous than he ever intended. He discovered that reality is not a predetermined script unfolding smoothly. It's a field of infinite potential collapsing into singular experience moment by moment in response to observation. And you are the observer, not someday, not when you've healed enough or learned enough or become enough. Now, in this moment, reading these words, breathing, existing, observing, every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every belief you hold, it's all shaping your probability field. It's all influencing which version of reality has the highest likelihood of collapsing into your experience. And here's the beautiful part, the part that makes this empowering rather than overwhelming. You don't have to be perfect, you don't have to control every thought, you don't have to eliminate all fear and doubt. You just have to shift your dominant frequency, the state you return to most often, the observer you are when you're not trying to be anyone. That's what collapses the wave. That's what manifests your reality. And the moment you accept that, the moment you stop fighting the quantum nature of existence and start working with it, everything changes, not smoothly, not predictably, but suddenly, discontinuously, in a quantum jump that takes you from one state to another with no intermediate steps, just like Schrödinger's equation predicted all along. So here's my question for you as we close this out. What would change if you stopped trying to control the collapse? If you trusted that the quantum field is responsive, not random, that the wave will collapse in perfect alignment with the observer you're being? What would happen if you focused less on the how and the when, and more on the frequency, on the coherence, on becoming the version of yourself who would naturally observe that reality into being? Schrödinger fought the collapse his whole life, and in fighting it, he missed the point. The collapse isn't the enemy, it's the mechanism. It's how infinite possibility becomes lived experience. It's how you go from dreaming a new reality to living it. And the bridge between the two? Not effort, not force, not more techniques or more doing, just observation, conscious, aligned, coherent observation. That's the power Schrödinger's equation revealed. The power of the observer to participate in creation. Not as a separate being manipulating reality from the outside, but as consciousness itself, collapsing waves, manifesting experience, co-creating with the quantum field. This is Observer Effect, Episode 11. And if this resonated with you, if you felt something shift as you listened, drop one word in the comments that captures your energy right now. I read every single one. And here's the thing, we've been building to something across this entire series. Because in Episode 12, I'm going to show you the fundamental difference between how most people think reality works versus how quantum mechanics says it actually works. It's the difference between finding a reality that already exists and creating a reality through observation. The full playlist and the next episode are linked in the description below. Trust me, you'll want to see where this goes. Schrödinger wanted to eliminate uncertainty. Instead, he discovered that uncertainty is the fertile ground from which all possibility emerges, the waviness before the collapse, the infinite potential before the observation. That's not something to fear. That's your power, because until the wave collapses, anything is possible. And you're the one holding the lens. You're the one observing reality into being. Don't forget that.